Hello and welcome. My name is Jeb Brooks. I want to say thank you for joining us for Briefing for Sales Leaders. We promise to be brief, to be bright, and bring it all to you in 19 minutes. Today we're going to be talking about the three types of nightmare sales reps, and perhaps most importantly, how to coach them. Our guest today is a very good friend and great colleague of mine here at the Brooks Group, Angie Wheeler. Angie brings to us today 23 years of sales and consulting experience through a broad range of different types of organizations, but perhaps most importantly for the topic of the day is the fact that she has coached nearly 9,000 people all over the globe. So she has certainly worked with these nightmare types. So with that, let me turn it over to Angie. Hey, Angie, who are these people we're talking about today?
Who are these? Well, the good news and the bad news is, Jeb, we've all worked with them over the years, and they do tend to stick in our memory. And, frankly, we've got the three really top nightmare salespeople, ones that are so easily related to, but I think we've all known others that might fit in other categories as well. So just for everybody to keep in mind, the points that we're going to be talking about really apply to any challenging coaching situation, but of course there's much more complexity to it. So we'll get to that in a little bit. But who are they? Oh my gosh. First, let's talk about Narcissist Nancy for a minute. Narcissist Nancy, she is the sales rep who thinks that, it's okay to be a Lone Ranger because my numbers show I'm doing the right thing. So if you just stay out of my way and let me produce, all will be good. Don't micromanage me. And you compare Narcissist Nancy to, let's call him Legacy Larry. And he's the one who has the attitude of, especially for anybody that's younger or newer to an organization, you've heard people say, I know more about these processes or these products than or I've forgotten more about these than you'll ever know. And he, because he's seen it all, and that's a lot of good, there's a lot of positive in that, he tends to think that changes, evolution in how companies go about offering their products and services and selling them don't really need to apply to him, because he's so well versed. And then we have, I like to call him Teflon Tim. We all know these kind of folks who are, maybe they came into the organization because they had some connections. In general, we tend to see them as younger, maybe in their 20s, early 30s, who had a connection to the CEO or maybe a senior member. But let's not forget, these folks also can be coming onto our team because they were part of a company that maybe acquired ours, and so they feel like they're in a more superior position because they're part of the acquiring company, that any criticism of what they're doing is going to fall on deaf ears. So those really are how I would sum up three of the toughest coaching cases that we as sales leaders tend to see over time.
So Narcissist Nancy, Legacy Larry, and Teflon Tim. If only they were always named so clearly. Sometimes it's tougher to spot them than that. But
yeah.
let's take a look at, let me ask you this, Angie. What does good coaching look like?
Well, good coaching looks like, first, it has to be well thought out, and you need a coaching plan that is driven by facts and observations. There is no room for gossip, no room for conjecture, no room for only basing any of your commentary or coaching on opinions. You know why? Because if you don't take this measured and fact-driven approach, see our poor guy pushing the boulder up the hill. You guys remember back to your high school or college days, in Greek mythology, you remember hearing about Sisyphus, who was doomed to eternity to push a boulder up the hill over and over just to watch it slide back down. Well, that's what happens when we don't take the most effective approach to coaching the salespeople on our team. Is we just have to keep dealing with these same issues and problems over and over, and nobody has time for that, and we have too many other important roles that we play to just be a broken record and have this monkey on our back. So that's why we're going to take a closer look at some of the most important things that we can do as coaches to make sure we can work with our sales team, work with the individuals, come together for a better future state.
And can you give us an example?
Oh my gosh, can I give you an example? I've got a backpack full of examples. Yeah, so one that comes to mind, I had a very large team. We had a 700-person sales team, and one guy sticks out. His name wasn't Larry, but his name was actually Phil. And Phil, in a nutshell, would not put any information into their CRM because he was afraid that other people would poach it. Phil, sometimes not, would show up to the Monday morning sales meetings, and when he wasn't there, he always said, well, I'm out making calls. I'm out bringing in new business. That's why I'm not going to come to these meetings. And Phil tended to not play well with others. And, as sales leaders, sometimes we're willing to go along with that if somebody is producing really well, because it's such a fine line. Do I risk being perceived as a micromanager or muddling in his business and the way he goes about business? Because there's some risk to that. And at the end of the day, especially for a publicly held company, but really a company of any size, as sales leaders, our number one priority is revenue. So this guy, he was tough, and he had basically just been given a free pass by sales leaders, just one after the other, just stay out of his way. But it really created some chaos internally as well. So that's just one of many, many examples.
Well, thanks. Let's take just a second and talk about the sort of the purpose of the brief and R. We're giving you some nuggets, right? We want you to walk away in a very short period of time with some ideas. So one of the things I've asked Angie to do will ask Angie to do, is to share a framework for a good coaching conversation. And unfortunately, we really can't get into the details in a 19-minute session. So if you're interested in expanding on what you're hearing here about Narcissist Nancy, Legacy Larry, and Teflon Tim, I highly recommend you consider our sales coaching workshop coming up in Nashville, September 14th and 15th. So if you have questions about that, reach out to us. You can find out details either by having a conversation with us or checking out our website. That link is there, and we'll be providing that via email as well. But just know we're giving you a very high-level overview in 19 minutes, and really this takes a lot more than that to master, as Angie has. So with that, let me turn it back to you, Angie, and ask you to walk us through that high-level framework, knowing that you're boiling down 23 years of experience with 9,000 individuals into just one quick minute. So what's that framework?
Well, first off, that's about probably the easiest thing I'll do all day is 23 years and 9,000 people down into 1 minute. All right, ready? Okay, I'm ready. I'm sitting up straight in my chair, and here we go. All right, it's actually not too tough. And I'm going to say, hey, first of all, for everybody that's listening, it's just as much as we're going to say there's a lot of detail, it's also important to not overthink it and realize you already know a lot. So what you're going to notice here is tapping into some stuff that's practical and a lot of common sense, but it just takes, again, that measured factor of an approach. So first off, what do we need to do to prepare for these coaching conversations? The information that we pull together from a preparation standpoint is we've got to make sure that we go back and look at what are we actually trying to achieve? What are we trying to change? Is it a behavior? Is it a skill? Is it an attitude? And by the way, good luck with that, because that can be, that can be pretty tough. But you have to decide what your goal is, because if you are wanting to change or have an impact on somebody's sales results, and you realize that they don't have the depth of knowledge that they need for a particular product or particular product set, then that's going to be a fairly easy and straightforward coaching conversation. Now, you still need to have the dialogue because you only have your side of the story, but determine what your goal is. If it's more about attitude or behaviors, we're going to go about it a little bit differently. Set your goal and then the supporting context that you need. Think about it this way. You're putting together your business case just like you would as a salesperson. What information are you relying on? Where are you getting it from? And is it going to hold up to scrutiny? Because with these folks that are really tough to coach, they're going to challenge you. And basically, they need to see proof of your opinion, especially if it goes beyond just lacking sales results. So what are the facts that you're pulling from? What observations? Hopefully you've been out in the field or you've been on sales calls. You know specifically what you need to deal with. It might be the ability to take a deeper dive into questioning to really understand a prospect's needs instead of making some assumptions. So that would be an example of some observations you would want to make and draw on. And then finally, for anybody that's been to our workshops, our sales workshops and our sales management workshops, remember how intriguing behavior styles are and the differences that it makes in how we decide how we want to communicate with somebody. So just, in a nutshell, when you have a hard-driving, more assertive or aggressive, fairly high ego individual, say like a narcissist, Nancy, the way you want to handle the conversation from the very first words out of your mouth to the way you wrap it up is going to be different than somebody that takes a more methodical, careful approach. So any indication that you can find on their behavior style is certainly going to guide the conversation that you have. So for the conversation itself then, make sure right up front you get agreement on the goal. Get agreement of we are going to have a conversation around I'll use the same example, the ability to gather all the important facts and needs and wants that a prospect might be sharing with us and see where we might be missing some things. See where, in cases in the past, we may have had a couple gaps that could have caused us to lose some business. So let's get agreement that if this is not a punitive conversation, this is not a performance management conversation in terms of a larger performance review. This is about, hey, what can we do together so this salesperson can be even stronger in the future? And it's really important to stress this is a conversation. It's a dialogue. This is not you telling the salesperson what to do. So you're going to see when we talk a little bit further here in a few minutes about the 3 types of salespeople that we've talked with, there are some really important things to remember in terms of we have to recognize their contribution. We're not blowing smoke up their skirt, but these folks demand recognition and respect. That's part of why they can be really challenging because sometimes it's a little misplaced. We need to validate their contribution. We also need to be flexible in possibly coming up with additional ways that we might want to solve a problem. We need to listen to their ideas, but at the same time, we do need to be clear when we have a directive that we need to deliver or if we need to make sure we communicate a consequence to not making these changes, that there will be an impact if we can't come together with our salesperson and make these changes in collaboration and in agreement. So then in terms of follow-up, where do we go from here for all of these? I cannot tell you, Jeb, how many times over the years I have worked with individual salespeople and individual sales leaders, and they tell me about these coaching conversations that they have and they feel like they're making good progress, but at the same time, they don't have a measured cadence for follow-up and measurement. And are their salespeople actually changing their behaviors, building on their skill set, and do they see that there is an endpoint in the future instead of it just being these rolling issues? So definitely accountability comes in, but also appreciation for their collaboration at the same time.
That's it. It's not coaching if there's not follow-up. So let's dig in. Talk to us about Narcissist Nancy.
Narcissist Nancy. Well, let's go about these 3 real quick by first looking at the risk that we run in not holding these coaching conversations the way they should be done, the way we've described. First off, with Nancy, she can damage the company's brand or reputation depending on how she acts and speaks out in the market. And she really, you know, we all have these kind of bull in the china shop or salespeople that, like I said, they're not the team players, and so it really causes some chaos, and that ends up taking up a lot of our time, having to manage emotions and non-business related issues. And really one of the biggest risks that we run is, again, it's that fine line, because if Narcissist Nancy is a high performer, then we have to be very thoughtful and careful, because if she's a high performer, she's being courted by other organizations. And she could probably write her own checks for where she goes. So if we want to keep that revenue, we have to be very deliberate in how we go about coaching her. And so some of the ways that we need to do that is, again, acknowledging her value and her contributions, but make sure that we are using the facts to gain her buy-in, because Narcissist Nancy also knows, even if she's not a high performer, you can't argue with the facts. And listen to her opinions and be willing to go along with an idea she may have. Might not have been your first choice, but if it's reasonable, go along with it, because again, that feeds her ego. Now, here's where you want to push back on her. Narcissist Nancy likes to blame others. Narcissist Nancy likes to have excuses, and so you got to push back on those. With Legacy Larry, it can be a little bit different. Legacy Larry, like we talked about before, he knows so much, so he wants to be credited for that. He does have those competing loyalties between the old school, or competing loyalties between old school and new school. So recognize his tenure and do ask his opinion, but really be clear with him on what's not negotiable. You know, this is the new guard, Larry. We don't want to lose your knowledge and your influence that you have within the organization, but we're in a new situation. This is a new day. So you're on the bus or you're not, that type of conversation. And then wrapping it up with agreement, letting him continue to play a lead somewhere within the team that will feed his ego as well. And then with Teflon Tim, it can be a little bit different. Teflon Tim has some divided loyalty. Whoever helped him come into this position, or the acquiring organization that he came in with, he's going to feel loyalty on that side, but then hopefully he feels them to you as a sales leader as well. So we not only need to make sure we keep him happy and performing, but whoever's his mentor, if this is somebody that's really important in our world, more senior to us, we've got to make sure that we are communicating to that mentor as well if there is any conflict or issue with us and Teflon Tim. So let's reinforce his role and his value to the team. Ask his insights, but guide him where necessary, and really focus on the future with Teflon Tim. Teflon Tim, if he's younger, he wants to know what's in this for me, what are the benefits for me in Jeb, if you're my sales leader, doing it you say versus what my Uncle Bob, who's been here for 20 years, is telling me is most important.
Of course. Thank you for running those through. We have time for a really quick question. We've had several come in, and let me toss this one out. 30 seconds. This is for you, Angie. I've dealt with a lot of narcissist Nancy types in my career. Haven't been able to make them change. Can you truly change someone's attitude?
Oh.
And you've got 20 seconds to answer.
Got 20 seconds, yeah. Tough question. Here's the bottom line. Most commonly, these folks want to be heard. And as sales leaders, we don't always take the time to have those deep individual conversations to really be heard on what their opinions are, and take them into consideration and be very clear on where we agree and where we disagree. So that's the main goal. We got to listen to them, even when it's hard, and then make the decisions together from there and use the facts to drive it. That will change the attitude over time.
All right. Well, I want to thank you, Angie. Thank you to our listeners. And we have a couple more questions here. We'll follow up with you individually. And I remind you, September 14th and 15th in Nashville, Tennessee, we're going to have a whole workshop dedicated to these topics, how to coach not only these types, but specific individuals, because we believe, and I think Angie would agree, the best coaching is tailored to the individual, not to a broad type. So with that, I wish you happy selling, happy sales leadership, And thank you for your time. Have a wonderful day.